Imagine being lost in a world of endless white, where every breath feels like swallowing knives, and the wind whispers promises of death. That's where our story begins, with Sofia Ramirez fighting against nature's fury in the heart of Vermont's Green Mountains. The wind howled like a pack of angry wolves racing through the valley. It carried tiny shards of ice that pricked Sofia's face like sharp needles. Snowflakes twirled around her in a wild, chaotic ballet, each one landing with a cold sting on her exposed skin. The sky hung low and gray, like a heavy curtain about to unleash a massive storm. Sofia yanked her worn-out jacket closer to her body, but the chill still snuck in, biting deep into her bones and making her shiver uncontrollably. She cursed the weather under her breath, but she had no time to complain. She had wandered farther from her cozy wooden cabin than she intended, all because she desperately needed firewood before the sun dipped below the horizon. Without it, the night would turn her home into an icebox, and survival in these mountains was no joke. The forest at the foot of the towering peaks was strangely silent, broken only by the eerie moans of the wind bending the massive pine trees. Sofia slung her heavy axe over her shoulder, feeling its weight pull at her muscles. Her breaths came out in fluffy white puffs that vanished quickly in the freezing air. Suddenly, a faint noise cut through the storm. A deep, pained groan that barely rose above the roaring gusts. She halted abruptly, her heart thumping like a drum in her chest. Was it just her imagination playing tricks in isolation? No. There it was again. A weak sound filled with agony that made her skin crawl more than the cold ever could. Her eyes scanned the vast sea of snow, searching desperately. The noise was nearby, but the wind twisted it, making it impossible to pinpoint. "Hello? Is anyone out there?" she shouted, her voice shaky from the biting freeze and a spark of fear. Silence replied, mocking her. Sofia paused for just a moment, weighing her options, safety in turning back or the pull of helping someone in need. Her gut won. She couldn't ignore it. She pressed on carefully, her boots sinking and crunching into the icy crust with every step. Then, through the swirling white, she spotted a dark lump buried under a fresh drift of snow. Her pulse raced as she rushed over, dropping to her knees and frantically brushing away the powder. Her fingers went numb, but she didn't stop. Beneath the snow lay a man, his skin pale as fresh milk, his dark hair frozen in stiff spikes. His clothes screamed money. Fine fabric, but now torn and soaked through with melting ice. His lips had turned a scary shade of blue, and his eyes fluttered half open, lost in a haze. "Hey, can you hear me?" Sofia grabbed his shoulder and shook it lightly, but he barely twitched. "Sir, you have to wake up." A soft, guttural moan escaped him, his fingers twitching feebly against the deadly chill. Sofia leaned in closer, her warm breath mingling with his faint one. "If you don't get up, this cold will kill you for sure." His lips parted slightly, and a hoarse whisper slipped out, "Help!" Determination flashed in her eyes like a spark in the dark. She quickly assessed him. His leg twisted unnaturally, blood staining the snow crimson below. A broken leg in this brutal weather? He wouldn't last the hour without intervention. Swearing softly to herself, she hooked his arm over her shoulders and heaved him up. He was dead weight, heavier than he looked, pulling her down into the snow. "Come on, I'm not abandoning you out here," she grunted through clenched teeth, staggering under the load. Each step was a battle, the deep snow sucking at her boots, the wind slashing like whips across her face. The man groaned in pain, his head lolling against her shoulder, but she pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower. The freeze clawed at her like invisible talons, numbing her arms and turning her cheeks raw and burning. His breathing was shallow, ragged, his body limp like a rag doll against hers. But Sofia refused to give in. She'd faced storms before, and this one wouldn't beat her. Finally, her cabin emerged from the blizzard like a lifeline. Simple wooden walls, smoke curling from the chimney. She kicked the door open with a thud, nearly collapsing as she dragged him inside. The warmth hit her like a wave, contrasting sharply with the icy hell outside. The fire in the stone hearth crackled merrily, casting dancing shadows on the rough pine walls and filling the air with the comforting scent of burning wood. With every muscle screaming, she maneuvered him onto the faded couch by the fire. His skin was ice-cold, fingers rigid as sticks from frostbite. She piled on thick blankets that smelled of wool and faint lavender from storage, wrapping him snugly. Kneeling beside him, she examined his injuries more closely. His face was angular, handsome even in unconsciousness, but his expensive coat was shredded, crusted with dried blood that flaked under her touch. Her gaze fixed on his leg, a nasty gash along his shin, swollen and red against his ghostly pale skin. Sophia muttered another curse. Infection in these remote parts could turn deadly fast, with no hospital for miles. Acting swiftly, her hands steady despite the adrenaline rush, she fetched warm water from the kettle, its steam rising like a ghost in the cozy room. The metallic tang of blood filled her nostrils as she cleaned the wound, wincing at the sight but pushing through. He stirred faintly, a low groan bubbling up, but his eyes stayed shut. She bandaged it tightly with clean strips of cloth, tying knots with practiced ease. Exhaling slowly, she stepped back. Now it was up to fate and time. Hours ticked by in the quiet cabin, the wind battering the windows like an angry visitor. Sophia settled into her old rocking chair opposite the couch, her eyes never leaving him. His breathing deepened, color creeping back into his cheeks under the fire's golden glow, which highlighted the stubble on his jaw and the strong lines of his features. He didn't fit here, no rough edges like the local hunters or farmers. Who was this mystery man, and what crazy twist had landed him in her snowy nightmare? A raspy voice shattered the silence. "Where am I?" Sophia bolted upright, approaching cautiously as his eyelids fluttered open, revealing sharp hazel eyes darting around in confusion. "You're in my cabin," she replied firmly yet kindly. "I found you buried in the snow. You were this close to freezing solid." He groaned, pressing a hand to his temple as fragments of memory teased him. It's all blurry." Sophia eyed him suspiciously. "What's your name?" After a long pause, blinking against the flickering light, he whispered hoarsely, Alexander Thornton." The name rang a faint bell, but she couldn't place it. "You were in bad shape," she continued, arms crossed, leg mangled, no gear at all. "What on earth happened to you?" Alexander sighed deeply, wincing as he shifted upright, clutching the bandage. "It's foggy. The cold, the storm, then blank." Sophia studied him intently. Was it genuine amnesia or a clever cover? Either way, his story didn't add up. Suddenly, his expression turned to panic. "My phone, wallet." He patted his pockets frantically. "They're missing, everything's gone." The air grew thick with tension. Sophia's stomach knotted. In this harsh wilderness, lost items often meant foul play, and abandoning someone to die screamed of intent. "You think you were robbed?" she asked evenly. Alexander's laugh was bitter, echoing hollowly. "What else fits?" Sophia stared into the flames, their crackle mirroring her swirling thoughts. Alexander Thornton. Fancy clothes, piercing eyes, no recall, left for dead. Danger lurked in his tail, but her heart wouldn't let her turn him out. Not yet. Morning light filtered through the frosted windows, painting the cabin in soft hues. The embers popped quietly, the air rich with pine and smoked meat, a familiar, grounding scent. Sophia moved with ease, adding logs to the stove and setting a kettle to boil, steam curling up with herbal whispers. Blankets rustled behind her. Alexander stirring, his movements stiff, grimacing at his leg. Exhaustion lingered, but his eyes were sharper now. "You're up," she noted, setting down a tin mug. He nodded, rubbing his face to chase away lingering shadows. "Guess I owe you a huge thank you for saving my skin." Sophia chuckled dryly. "You'd be a popsicle otherwise." She poured the steaming liquid and handed it over. "Drink up, it'll thaw you out." He eyed it warily. "What's this?" "Spruce tip tea." She grinned at his hesitation. "No options, city boy, sip or shiver." At city boy. He gave her an amused glance but complied, grimacing at the tangy bite yet feeling its warmth spread. The door creaked open, and an elderly woman entered, bundled in wool, her gray eyes locking onto Alexander with wary curiosity. "So, this the outsider you dragged from the drifts?" Clara Ramirez asked, her tone mixing intrigue and caution. Sophia straightened. "Grandma, meet Alexander." "Alexander, Clara Ramirez." He nodded politely, adjusting for composure. "Ma'am," Clara hummed, scrutinizing him before turning to Sophia. "He doesn't fit here." Sophia crossed her arms defiantly. "Couldn't leave him to perish." Clara sighed, removing her hood. "Too soft-hearted, girl. Strangers spell trouble." Sophia held her ground. Clara's caution came from years of mountain hardships, not cruelty. "He stays till he's healed." Clara relented, preparing breakfast with deliberate motions. Alexander watched silently, taking in the cabin's humble warmth. Shelves of preserved jars, hanging herbs, worn rifles by the door. The bond between grandmother and granddaughter was palpable, unspoken yet strong. Food aromas thickened the air, Alexander's hunger gnawing fiercely. Sophia smirked at his expression. "Starving, eh? Haven't eaten since?" "Who knows?" he admitted, frowning. "Lucky you, breakfast's ready." Clara served hearty chowder. Smoked trout, root veggies, wild herbs, earthy, steaming, simple yet soul-filling. He hesitated, then savored it, the rich flavors exploding. Far from city luxuries, this was pure nourishment. Glancing at Sophia, who ate efficiently, he asked, "This is your everyday life? Foraging, crafting, laboring for warmth?" She shrugged. "Tough, but authentic." Alexander pondered. "I've never toiled like that." Clara snorted. "Typical." He chuckled softly. Sophia observed. This affluent stranger at their table reevaluating life. Perhaps he had depths after all. Days blurred in the cabin's rhythm. Fires crackled, a constant companion. Winds howling outside. Alexander strengthened, though hobbled. The simplicity oddly soothed him. Sophia's tireless routine, chopping, trapping, cooking, caring, inspired him like no boardroom ever had. One evening, the firelight was warm and smoky. Alexander broke the quiet. "Something to confess." Sophia paused, mending. "Not a criminal?" He chuckled. "No, but wealthy." She raised a brow. He exhaled. "Alexander Thornton, CEO of Thornton Dynamics, tech, real estate, global offices." "Okay." He expected awe. She shrugged, stitching on. "That's it." She nodded, bit thread. "Expect what?" "Shock, usually." She leaned back. "Money rules your world. Here, useless for fire, food, survival." Words struck deep. His life of privilege felt empty. Humility bloomed. She rose. "Bedtime. Don't overthink, city boy." Alone, he questioned everything. What if a single swing of an axe could shatter a lifetime of luxury and rebuild a man from the ground up? In the unforgiving embrace of Vermont's wilderness, Alexander Thornton was about to discover that true strength isn't bought. It's earned through sweat, failure, and the quiet wisdom of those who live close to the earth. The morning air hit like a slap of freshness, carrying the sharp scent of snow-kissed pines that invigorated the soul. Alexander leaned against the cabin's rough wooden railing, gazing out at the vast, untamed landscape. The Green Mountains rose like ancient guardians against a crisp blue sky, their summits capped in pristine white that sparkled under the sun. It was a view that humbled him, so different from the concrete jungle of Chicago, where steel towers pierced the clouds and nature was confined to manicured parks. Here, the world felt alive, raw, and indifferent to human wealth or status. A place where survival demanded respect for the land itself. Sophia emerged from around the corner, her old axe balanced casually on her shoulder like an extension of her arm. She glanced at him standing idle, then at the dwindling firewood stack by the door. "If you're just going to gawk at the view all day, might as well make yourself useful," she said with a teasing glint in her eye. tossing a pair of thick, worn gloves his way. He caught them clumsily, the leather rough against his once soft palms. "Chopping wood? Are you serious?" Alexander asked, half amused, half doubtful. Sophia smirked, her breath visible in the chill. "Unless you fancy freezing your fancy behind tonight. Come on, city boy. Time to earn your keep." He sighed but slipped on the gloves, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and excitement. His entire life had revolved around high-stakes negotiations, sealing deals worth millions from plush offices. Manual labor? That was for others. Yet, as he followed Sophia to a small clearing behind the cabin, crunching through fresh snow that soaked his borrowed boots, he felt a pull, a curiosity about this simple, grounded way of life. At first, it was a disaster. The axe felt unwieldy in his hands, heavier than expected, and his swings were awkward, glancing off the log with pathetic thuds that barely chipped the bark. Wood chips flew haphazardly, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the biting cold, mixing with the earthy smell of split pine. Sophia stood nearby, arms crossed over her flannel shirt, biting back a grin as she watched his fumbling efforts. "You're swinging like the log owes you money or something. Loosen up. It's not a boardroom rival." Alexander wiped his brow, panting slightly, the cold air burning his lungs in a refreshing way. "This is harder than it looks. Maybe you should just do it. I'm clearly out of my element." "Oh no," she replied, stepping closer with a determined look. "You're not getting off that easy. Here, adjust your grip like this." She placed her calloused hands over his, guiding his fingers into position on the handle. Her touch was firm yet gentle, carrying the warmth of someone used to hard work, and for a moment, Alexander was distracted. The proximity, the faint scent of wood smoke in her hair, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees and highlighted her focused expression. "Now widen your stance, plant your feet firmly. Feel the weight, then let it fall with control." He nodded, swallowing hard, and focused. This time, when he swung, the axe bit deep, splitting the log cleanly in two with a satisfying crack that echoed through the clearing. The pieces tumbled apart, and a rush of triumph surged through him. Simple, pure, unlike any corporate victory. "There you go," Sophia exclaimed, her grin wide and genuine. "See? Not so bad once you stop overthinking it." Alexander stared at the split wood, a small smile creeping onto his face. It was just a log, but it felt like conquering a mountain. Maybe there was something addictive about this hands-on world after all. As days turned into weeks, Alexander dove deeper into the rhythm of mountain life, his body adapting with each new challenge. Mornings started with fetching water from the nearby frozen stream, where he'd chip through thin ice layers with a pick, the crystal-clear liquid gurgling as it filled buckets that he hauled back, muscles burning from the effort. The cold water splashed occasionally, soaking his sleeves and sending shivers, but it invigorated him, waking senses dulled by years of desk work. Afternoons often meant patching the cabin's roof, climbing a rickety ladder to nail down loose shingles, the wind whipping at his face while the scent of fresh tar and aged wood filled the air. One windy day, a gust nearly knocked him off balance, his heart racing as he gripped the edge, but Sophia's steady voice from below guided him. "Easy does it, breathe and focus." He laughed nervously once safe, realizing how alive he felt in these moments of peril. Evenings brought trap setting in the forest, where Sophia taught him to lay simple snares for rabbits or squirrels. The woods were a symphony of sounds, rustling leaves, distant bird calls, the crunch of snow underfoot, and smells, from damp earth to wild berries. Alexander's first attempts were comical. His knots slipped, and traps sprung empty. "Patience," Sophia advised, her eyes sparkling with amusement as she demonstrated again, her fingers nimble from years of practice. "The wild doesn't rush, neither should you." Gradually, he improved, and the day he checked a snare to find a caught rabbit, the mix of accomplishment and respect for the cycle of life hit him hard. They prepared it together that night, the savory aroma of stew simmering over the fire, flavors deepened by herbs Sophia foraged herself. His wardrobe transformed too, no more tailored suits. He donned flannel shirts and sturdy denim from Clara's late husband's trunk, the fabric soft from wear but tough against the elements. His hands, once manicured for meetings, now bore calluses and small cuts, badges of his new reality. And strangely, he didn't mind. Each blister was a story, each ache a lesson. Clara watched this evolution with a mix of skepticism and quiet approval, often muttering, "City folk don't last," but offering tips like how to read the sky for incoming storms, her voice carrying the wisdom of generations. One crisp afternoon, as they ventured deeper into the woods for more advanced lessons, Sophia handed him a crossbow, its wooden frame smooth and heavy. "Ready to step up? Hunting's next on the list." Alexander raised an eyebrow, feeling the weight in his hands. "You're turning me into a survival expert now? What if I shoot my own foot?" She laughed, a sound like clear bells in the quiet forest. "Then you'll learn fast. But seriously, if you want to eat, you need to contribute. And hey, if things go south, I'll tell your fancy board members it was all my idea." The next dawn, they set out early, the air sharp with the resinous tang of pines, frost crunching under their boots. Alexander tried to mimic Sophia's silent steps, but twigs snapped loudly beneath him, earning playful shushes from her. "You're like a bear crashing a party. Lighten up." They tracked a deer for over an hour, following faint prints in the snow, the forest alive with subtle signs. Broken branches, fresh droppings. When the animal finally appeared, grazing peacefully in a small glade, Sophia nudged him. "Your shot, Slicker. Steady now." His heart pounded as he raised the crossbow, the string taut against his finger. The deer twitched its ears, sensing something amiss. "Don't hesitate," Sophia whispered urgently. He released. The bolt whistled through the air but veered wide, embedding in a tree trunk with a thud. The deer bolted, vanishing into the underbrush. Sophia winced dramatically. "Oof, that was rough to watch. We'll call it practice." Alexander groaned, rubbing his forehead in embarrassment, but her teasing lightened the failure. "Maybe I should stick to spreadsheets and stocks." "Nah," she replied, clapping his shoulder. "Everyone misses at first. Tomorrow we try again, and again until you nail it." But the day wasn't over with lessons. As they headed back, the atmosphere shifted eerily. The birds fell silent, the wind hushed to a whisper. Sophia froze mid-step, her body tense like a coiled spring. "Hold up," she murmured, scanning the trees. "Something's off." Alexander felt a chill unrelated to the weather. "What is it?" Before she could answer, a deep, rumbling growl vibrated through the foliage, sending birds scattering in panic. From the shadows emerged a massive black bear, its fur glossy and muscles rippling under its skin. Its dark eyes locked onto them, nostrils flaring as it huffed, paws the size of dinner plates crunching the snow. Alexander's blood turned to ice. He'd faced cutthroat executives, but this primal terror was new, gripping his chest like a vice. The bear was enormous, easily outweighing them both, and it stepped forward with menacing intent. Sophia reacted in a flash, yanking Alexander behind a thick oak trunk. "Stay low," she hissed, slinging her rifle from her shoulder in one fluid motion. The bear charged, snow flying in its wake, a roar echoing that shook the trees. Time slowed. Alexander's mind raced with fear, regret, gratitude. Sophia aimed high and fired a warning shot into the sky, the crack deafening, smoke acrid in the air. The bear skidded to a halt, ears flattening, confused by the noise. It let out a final, frustrated huff before turning and lumbering back into the depths, vanishing like a shadow. Alexander slumped against the tree, hands trembling, breaths coming in gasps. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever faced. I thought we were done for." Sophia lowered the rifle, exhaling slowly, her own adrenaline fading. She managed a smirk, though her eyes showed the close call. "Welcome to real life in Vermont, city boy. Bears don't care about your bank account. They just want lunch." He let out a shaky laugh, the tension breaking like a dam. In that instant, something profound shifted inside him. Sophia had put herself between him and danger without a second thought, risking everything for a stranger she'd barely known weeks ago. No one in his polished world had ever done that. Not business partners sealing deals, not fleeting romances in luxury suites, not even those he called friends. They chased profits, not loyalty. But here, in this wild place, value came from actions, from heart. As they trudged back to the cabin, the sun dipping low and painting the snow in golden hues, Alexander stole glances at Sophia. Her stride was confident, rifle slung casually, but he saw the quiet strength that defined her. That evening, by the hearth's comforting crackle, he pondered deeper. The fire's warmth seeped into his bones, but his mind was a storm of fragmented memories, piecing together like a jigsaw puzzle from hell. Sophia sat across, sipping herbal tea that steamed gently, her green eyes watching him with quiet curiosity. "You look like you've unlocked a secret door in your head," she said softly, breaking the silence. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples as the puzzle clicked. "I think I finally remember why I ended up out there. Why someone wanted me gone for good." She set her mug down carefully, leaning forward. "Go on, spill it. No holding back now." Alexander took a deep breath, steadying himself as the recollections flooded in. "Before waking in that snow hell, I was in Chicago wrapping up a massive business deal. My company, Thornton Dynamics, was on the verge of acquiring a huge lithium mine in Wyoming. Untapped reserves worth trillions, the kind that could reshape industries." Sophia's brow furrowed, her expression darkening like gathering clouds. "And let me guess, it wasn't all above board? Shady corners in the negotiations." He hesitated, shame creeping in. In his old life, ethics were flexible, handled by lawyers and underlings while he focused on wins. But sitting here under her honest gaze, it felt wrong. "The bidding was fierce," he admitted. "Rivals everywhere, people who'd profit hugely if I vanished from the picture. Disappearing me meant the deal could swing their way." She leaned in closer, intensity in her voice. "So, you believe someone tried to erase you? For what? Control of some rocks?" His jaw tightened, fists clenching involuntarily. "Not just anyone. I think it was my own assistant, Daniel Brooks. The guy I trusted with everything. Schedules, travel, even security." The memories sharpened like a knife's edge. A luxurious chalet near Casper, Wyoming, fire roaring in the hearth as Daniel stood by, reviewing final documents with a calm smile. "Everything's lined up perfectly," Daniel had said, pouring a glass of aged scotch that gleamed amber in the light. "By tomorrow, the mine's locked in, yours." Alexander had taken the drink, clinking glasses. "No surprises, right? I hate loose ends." Daniel's grin widened. "Of course, boss. You can always count on me." Then, a wave of dizziness, a sharp throb in his skull, the bitter aftertaste lingering on his tongue, blackness. Waking to endless white, cold seeping in, alone and stripped of everything. Alexander's voice hardened as he recounted it, knuckles white. "He must have spiked the drink, dragged me out into the wilderness, and left me assuming the elements would finish the job. By the time anyone declared me missing or dead, he'd have swooped in, sealed the deal, and pocketed the spoils." Sophia's eyes flashed with disgust, her lips pressing into a thin line. "All for greed? And you called the snake a trusted ally? Unbelievable, the lengths people go in your world." He let out a bitter chuckle, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "That's the cutthroat reality I swam in every day. Trust is just a tool until it isn't." But now, in this cabin's sanctuary, it all felt hollow. He couldn't let Daniel win, couldn't let betrayal define his story. "I have to stop him," he declared, resolve stealing his gaze. "I can't just hide here while he steals everything I've built." Sophia studied him for a long moment, the fire reflecting in her eyes like embers of thought. "So what's the plan? Storm back into your empire?" His hazel eyes darkened with determination. "Exactly. Go back, expose him, reclaim what's mine." Silence wrapped around them like a blanket. She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Right, Dive headfirst into that world of power plays and fortunes. Makes sense. He frowned, sensing her reservations. I don't have a choice. If I don't, he wins everything. Her expression softened slightly, but worry lingered. And after? You nail the traitor, lock him away. Then what? Slip back into your skyscraper life, forgetting the snow that nearly claimed you. Alexander paused, the question hitting like a fresh gust. He hadn't thought beyond revenge. The future was a blur. But glancing at Sophia, at this life of authenticity he'd glimpsed, a strange unease settled in his chest. He didn't want to leave, not really, not after tasting something real. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. Look, I have unfinished business. Just don't forget the lessons this place taught you. The wild has a way of stripping away the nonsense. Their eyes met, a charged moment stretching. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, warm, tentative. I promise I'll come back. This isn't goodbye. She searched his face for deception, finding only sincerity. Finally, she nodded once, squeezing his hand lightly. You better hold to that, city boy, or I'll track you down myself. For the first time, Alexander felt the weight of a promise worth keeping, one that tugged at his heart more than any deal ever could. The day of departure dawned under a somber gray sky, clouds swirling like unspoken doubts over the jagged peaks. The air bit sharper, or perhaps it was the ache of leaving that amplified the chill. Sophia stood outside the cabin, arms wrapped around herself against the wind, watching Alexander prepare. He was bundled in loaned layers, thick wool and sturdy boots, his legs still tender but strong enough for travel. The sled dogs yipped excitedly, paws stamping the snow, eager for the run ahead. You sure you're up for this trek, Slicker? Sophia asked, her voice light but eyes betraying concern. Alexander managed a sad smile, adjusting the harness. No turning back now. I have to set things right. Clara stood a few paces away, her face etched with hard-earned wisdom. Watch your back out there, boy. The world's a lot meaner than these mountains. He nodded gratefully. I will, ma'am. Thank you for everything. Turning to Sophia, words caught in his throat. A whirlwind of gratitude, regret, budding affection he couldn't yet name. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pressed a small brass locket into her palm, its surface worn smooth from years. What's this? She asked, fingers closing around it curiously. It belonged to my grandfather. He always said it guided him home, no matter how lost he got. Her gaze lifted to his, searching. And what's home mean to you now? Softly, vulnerably, he replied. I'm starting to figure that out, and it might not be where I thought. She clutched the locket tightly, a small smile breaking through. Then go find it. But remember your way back. The moment lingered, heavy with unsaid emotions, until he climbed onto the sled. With a sharp command, the dogs surged forward, kicking up a flurry of snow that blurred his receding form. Sophia stood rooted, watching until he vanished into the white horizon. For the first time since childhood, a deep, unfamiliar pang echoed in her chest. She missed him already, the stranger who'd stumbled into her life and stirred something long dormant. Weeks dragged on like molasses in winter, each day a grind of chores that Sophia threw herself into with fierce determination. She hunted through misty dawns, her rifle steady as she tracked game, the forest's whispers guiding her. Chopping wood became a ritual, the rhythmic thuds a way to drown thoughts of Alexander. Repairs around the cabin, sealing drafts, mending fences, kept her hands busy, but her mind wandered to that brass locket, which she fiddled with nightly, its cool metal a reminder of promises hanging in the air. Clara noticed, of course, her sharp eyes missing nothing. One evening, as she stirred a pot of venison stew over the fire, the rich, savory aroma filling the cabin, she broke the silence. He's not coming back, you know. City types never do. Sophia didn't meet her gaze, focusing on sharpening a knife. I never said I expected him to. Clara sighed deeply, ladling stew into bowls. But you hope, child. I see it in your eyes. You care for him. Sophia scoffed, but it lacked conviction. Doesn't change a thing. He has his glittering world. I have this one. The mountains, the quiet, the fight to survive. Clara set the bowls down, her voice softening with rare tenderness. And what if his world feels empty now? What if he's changed, like you think? Sophia paused, the question lingering like smoke. She had no answer, only a quiet ache that grew with each passing day. The locket became her talisman, a beacon of what-ifs in the long, starry nights. Picture a world where skyscrapers touch the stars and fortunes are made in a blink. But one man's heart pulls him back to the snow-swept mountains where true belonging waits. As Alexander Thornton steps into the chaos of the city, he realizes the greatest treasure isn't gold. It's the quiet love that thawed his frozen soul. Weeks melted into a monotonous blur, like a slow-moving glacier under the sun. Sophia buried herself in the daily grind of mountain life, rising before dawn to hunt, her breath fogging the air as she navigated misty trails lined with frost-kissed ferns. The rifle felt familiar in her hands, its weight a comfort as she tracked elusive deer, the forest alive with the rustle of leaves and distant calls of wildlife. Afternoons were for chopping cords of wood, the axe singing through the air with each swing, splintering logs and satisfying cracks that echoed her resolve to push forward. Evenings brought repairs, patching leaks in the roof where rain had seeped through, the tangy scent of fresh sealant mixing with the earthy dampness. She told herself Alexander's silence didn't sting, that his world had swallowed him whole, but every glance at the trail he'd vanished betrayed her. Nights, she turned the brass locket over in her calloused fingers, its engraved details worn smooth, as if rubbing it could summon answers or ease the growing void in her chest. Clara, ever observant, caught the subtle shifts, the faraway looks, the extra vigor in chores as if to outrun thoughts. One twilight, as she stirred a hearty pot of root vegetable stew over the crackling fire, the cabin filled with comforting aromas of onions and herbs, she spoke up. "He's gone for good, girl. Don't fool yourself otherwise." Sophia avoided her eyes, focusing on mending a torn boot by the flickering light. "Who said I'm waiting? Life goes on." Clara sighed, her spoon clinking against the pot. "Your heart says differently. I know that look, hope mixed with hurt. You fell for that city stranger, didn't you?" Sophia let out a forced laugh, but it echoed hollow. "Even if I did, what good is it? His life's all lights and deals. Mine's dirt and determination." Clara ladled the stew, steam rising like whispers. "Hearts don't care about worlds. And what if he's out there, realizing the same? What if that fancy life feels like a cage now?" The words hung heavy, stirring a flicker of possibility in Sophia. She had no rebuttal, only the locket's quiet weight against her skin as she lay awake, stars twinkling through the window like distant promises. Then, one crisp evening shattered the routine. Sophia was outside, stacking firewood in neat piles, the wood's fresh cut scent sharp in the cooling air, when the distant bark of sled dogs pierced the quiet. She straightened, wiping sweat from her brow, expecting village traders with supplies. But the man who dismounted was unfamiliar. Tall, clad in a fur-lined coat that screamed outsider, his face angular and polished. He approached steadily, pulling a sealed envelope from his pocket. "Miss Ramirez?" he asked, voice carrying a city clip. Sophia nodded warily, her heart skipping a beat. He extended the letter, crisp and official. "This is from Alexander Thornton." Time seemed to freeze. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took it, the paper cool and foreign in her grasp. "He's waiting for you," the man added with a nod before remounting and vanishing into the dusk. Alone, Sophia tore open the envelope under the fading light, her pulse racing. The words inside were simple yet profound. An invitation to his world, a plea to see the changes he'd wrought, signed with a promise to explain everything. Alexander hadn't forgotten. The locket's guidance had led here. Now the choice was hers, to stay rooted or bridge the divide. Sophia had never imagined a place so alive with chaos, where lights blazed eternally and the hum of humanity drowned out nature's whispers. San Francisco unfolded before her like a vibrant beast, skyscrapers clawing at the heavens, streets pulsing with crowds that moved like rivers of color and sound. Horns blared in a symphony of impatience, neon signs flashed promises of excitement, and the air carried a mix of ocean salt, street food sizzle, and exhaust, overwhelming after the mountain's purity. She gripped the brass locket in her pocket like an anchor, its familiarity grounding her amid the alien whirl. The sleek black limo from the airport wove through the throng, pulling up to a towering hotel of glass and steel that gleamed under the sun. The doorman nodded politely, but Sophia barely registered, her eyes wide at the opulent entrance. Marble floors echoing footsteps, chandeliers dripping crystal like frozen rain. Was this really Alexander's domain? The elevator ascent was a silent hum over the city's roar, doors parting to reveal him waiting, poised yet changed. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. He looked the part of a billionaire again. Tailored suit hugging his frame, clean-shaven, exuding confidence. But his hazel eyes held a softness, a depth forged in snow and survival. "Sophia," he said, stepping forward, voice laced with relief and something deeper. She steadied herself, the locket's chain cool against her skin. "You called, I came." He nodded, a tentative smile breaking. "I promised I'd return. When I couldn't, I had to bring you here instead." She surveyed the penthouse. Polished granite counters, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the bay's glittering waters, furnishings that screamed luxury yet felt impersonal. It was worlds from her cabin's warmth. Sensing her unease, he closed the gap. "I know it's a lot to take in. Not meant to impress, but to show you the old me, and the new one emerging from the ashes you pulled me from." Over the following days, Sophia witnessed his transformation firsthand, each revelation pulling her deeper into his story. Mornings started with tours of his empire. Gleaming offices in high-rises where suited employees buzzed like bees, screens flickering with data. Alexander explained firing Daniel Brooks, the betrayal's sting still fresh as he recounted pressing charges, the legal battles unfolding like a thriller. "He thought he'd buried me literally," he said over coffee one day, the brew's rich aroma contrasting the bitter tale. "But surviving that storm, it gave me clarity. I reclaimed the company, but that's just the start." Evenings brought surprises. The launch of the Ramirez Outreach Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to rural communities like hers. Over a candlelit dinner of grilled seafood, flavors of lemon and herbs dancing on her tongue, he detailed it passionately. Infrastructure for remote areas, clinics stocked with supplies, schools with books and tech, aid for harsh winters. Real change, not just checks written from afar. Sophia's eyes widened. "You named it after me?" He smiled warmly. "Who else? You didn't just save my life, you showed me what matters. Without you, I'd still be blind to it all." She probed for insincerity, but found only genuine fire in his eyes, stories of site visits to similar wildernesses where he'd rolled up sleeves, helping build wells and distribute gear. One afternoon, strolling Golden Gate Park's winding paths, eucalyptus scents mingling with fog's cool kiss, he stopped abruptly. "Sophia, I love you." Her breath caught, the world narrowing to his earnest gaze. He took her hands, warmth defying the chill. "None of this, the money, the power, means anything without you. You've changed me." Her heart raced, emotions swirling like the park's swirling mists. Yet doubt lingered. She'd seen power corrupt promises. "If that's true," she challenged, holding up the locket, "prove it. Find your way home. Not with words, but actions." His brows knit in confusion, but resolve dawned. "I will, whatever it takes." Weeks passed in a haze. Sophia returned to Vermont's embrace, the mountains welcoming her like old friends, uncertainty shadowing her steps. Would he follow through? Days turned to months without word, her routine resuming, hunting under aurora-lit skies, chopping wood as snow fell softly. But then he appeared, not in grandeur but humbly, arriving by sled with simple gear, ready to learn. He immersed himself in village life, laboring beside her, splitting timber until blisters formed, the axe becoming a friend, hauling water from icy streams, laughing at slips on slick banks. Even hunting, his early misses turning to triumphs under her guidance. "Got one!" he'd yell, holding a rabbit proudly, Sophia's applause warming the cold. He grasped the land's rhythms, predicting storms by cloud shapes, foraging berries with care, respecting the balance of give and take. Villagers warmed to him, sharing stories around communal fires, flames crackling as laughter echoed. Through it all, Sophia saw the shift. The once-lost tycoon rebuilding not empires, but connections. He helped expand the foundation locally, organizing supply drops, building a small clinic where laughter of children mixed with herbal remedies scents. One dusk by the rushing brook, northern lights weaving emerald ribbons across the sky, he turned to her. "Sophia, this is it, home. Can I stay?" She beheld him. Survivor, learner, lover. Smiling, she slipped her hand into his. "Yes, forever." As auroras danced, Sophia knew their journey's true start. Alexander unearthed riches beyond measure. Purpose in simplicity, love in shared struggles, belonging in her arms. The girl who'd rescued a stranger had healed a wandering spirit, forging a life blending wild freedom and urban dreams. But the heart of it? Quiet moments, fireside talks, starlit walks, understanding that wealth flows from bonds unbreakable. If this tale warmed your spirit, like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Horizons for more captivating stories of love, resilience, and life's hidden joys. Join us in celebrating human connections that defy worlds. Stay strong, hopeful, and open to strangers' magic.